Thank you. Well, I'll just start by saying one of the benefits of coming last on a very esteemed and smart panel, I'll add good looking too, that is that they've already made my points for me, so this should be very easy for you. I'll start with a confession. I am not a food security specialist at all. I'm a scientist. I'm a person who provides scientific advice to non-scientific audiences. So as of recently, that advice has been about risk and resilience, largely in the context of climate change, extreme weather, and other kinds of extreme events. My institution is the National Academy of Sciences of the United States. We are non-governmental, we are private, we are nonprofit. I just want to make that clear because everyone thinks we're part of the government. Okay, so in terms of scientific and academic institutions, the core message here is that this is an opportunity to bring science to action, okay? And so in terms of building resilience for food security, or any other kind of resilience, I think, what have we heard in these last very busy 3 days? Well, we've heard a lot. And my takeaway message from these days is that everybody has a stake in building resilience. And we've heard it from the private sector. Anyone here from the private sector? No one's here from the, one lone private sector voice in the back. The donor community? Donor community, anybody? See? Public sector? NGOs, international NGOs, right? Academicians, the hands are going up in this kind of way because everyone feels that they have a role to play. Everyone feels they have some contribution to make. And so we get multi-sectoral conversations. We get multidisciplinary conversations. We get multi-jurisdictional ones too. So in this context, where we have a very diverse set of actors, people who are vested, people who are investing, what can we do? So I'm going to talk really about 3 functions that academic institutions can do to facilitate the building of resilience. One is translation. One is to translate. We heard from a statistician. Anyone here a statistician? I'm a mathematician. I'll qualify, right? So sometimes we need people to translate. That's one. Second one is integrate. So we have to translate across our disciplines and our languages, and we have to then integrate across common elements and themes. And the third thing is communicate. So it's translate, integrate, communicate. Got that? You guys still awake? Okay. All right, on the translate, when we're talking about building resilience, we've heard from agriculturalists, we've heard from sociologists, we've heard from economists, we've heard from faith-based organizations, we've heard from a lot of different groups here. And Connell, so sorry. Connell talked about working across sectors, and Sean talked about 1,100 partners, right? So we're talking about how, when you get all these people in the room, how do you make sense of this? So there's some translation to go on. And it was Connell who also talked about risk. So in the scientific community, we can talk about risk all day. You know, we can talk about vulnerability and exposure and uncertainty, that kind of thing. But we need to translate that into actions that policymakers can take. What do you do with that information? So there's a big translation function. Second function, just checking my time. Second function is integrate. So after getting people all in the room and figuring out what people are saying, there's a process of gleaning common themes, common functions, common objectives, and do you build up and then build across, or do you weave as you go along? Either way, you start to build this network, an integrated network. And that's something that academic institutions and scientific institutions can do. We heard in one of the sessions that there's 4 types of capital needed to build resilience. I heard human capital, institutional capital, social capital, and political capital. Now when it comes to integrating across those, it's very important to do, and you need that neutral kind of venue to make sure that no one of those sectors dominates. Third is communicate. So, anyone here consider themselves an expert in anything? everyone's hand should go up. You're here for a reason. Anyway, when you get to communicate, right, we have all kinds of websites, we have all kinds of databases, we all claim, or many of us claim, that our work is publicly available, but it doesn't mean it's accessible. It doesn't mean it's easy to find. And Sumay talked about accurate data. Misinformation is another thing that we have to worry about, right? So on this communicate, there's a lot of lessons learned. What we want to really work towards is lessons learned to lessons applied, right? So this role of communicating is something that these academic institutions can do. So let's translate, integrate, and communicate. And for my remaining 4 minutes, I won't go longer, I promised I wouldn't. On my remaining 4 minutes, I just want to talk a little bit about why, 3 minutes, why academic institutions are particularly well suited to do these three things. One reason is academic institutions pride themselves on methods and methodologies, right? It does not matter your discipline. Every discipline has a method, has a methodology, which means it's somewhat defensible, right? So if someone says, where did you get that from? You can go back and you say, this is our method, this is what we did. It may not be what you would do, but it's defensible. That's one. Another one is that most academic institutions rely on peer review. So it's not just, well, we think so, but it's we think so, and we use our professional networks to validate, correct, refine, and make it better. Peer review is a very important element as to why academic institutions can do this. Third, academic institutions are accustomed to dealing with interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary kinds of work. They should be. And so when you get this kind of discourse, these are people who are very accustomed to that. Very rarely do you get people who only deal with within their own discipline or own sector. The two last ones are really the ones I want to drive home. One is that when you get investments, when you get millions, maybe billions of dollars, you have people who are very vested in this activity. And what you want is this venue, a neutral, honest broker, kind of, to be able to bring people in and say, let's discourse in this safe space. So academic institutions, they have their reputations to really mind, right? And that's really all that we have. So when we bring people together, we must be neutral. And that provides for a very strong convening power and a very fair place for discourse. And lastly, we heard a lot about capacity building on this panel. And I can't think of a better way to build capacity than to build it in the next generation. So these are places where our next generation of workforce, our next generation of scientists, actors, are coming through. And what I see from my perch is that this interdisciplinary space, even for undergraduates, is really growing. People are wanting to talk across disciplines and across for a common function. And academic institutions provide that ability to do so. I'm going to end my comments there, and thank you.